He should be joining us shortly. So we're set to start at 5 p.m. on the dot. And if you miss any part of the event tonight, or if you can't stay and watch the whole thing, we are going to record it and post it on our Instagram as well as on James Binnion's there too. If you have any questions for James while you're watching, go ahead and type them in. We will have a Q&A session at the end. Hi, James. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Great. How are things in Washington?
Well, they're cloudy. They were sunny a little while ago, but the weather changes here rapidly.
Yeah, same thing for Michigan. We had rain about an hour or so ago, and now it's cleared up and the sky is blue and it's sunny.
All right.
Yeah. So we have some people joining us. It takes a little while for everyone to get in.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us.
Sure, absolutely. So I thought maybe I'd start off just by showing you my commute over to the shop. It's fairly quick, and we'll give people a little time to get signed in.
Great, that's a great idea.
I'm gonna switch the camera around here, and now if I can just see out here. This is, I'm surprised. Oh, here they come. This is a couple of the shop assistants here. That's that one there is Hoshi, and that's Moko. And right now they're being nice and quiet, but they're kind of like our doorbell. If anybody comes around, they make lots of noise.
Perfect.
So this is my horribly long commute. And then later on, I added the second building. But this is it. You can see it's kind of a nice spot, lots of trees, which was one of the things that really attracted us to be in here.
Yeah.
So let's see. Flip back around here. There we go. All right. So now I'm at work.
That was a lovely commute. So how long have you had this shop?
We moved here in 2001. Almost 20 years now.
Nice. So you're good and settled in then.
Getting there.
Okay, we have quite a few viewers have joined so far. Do you want to go ahead and start just showing us around your shop a bit while more people join?
Sure. Be happy to do that. Here, let me flip things around again a bit, and we'll. It's a mess. I can find stuff in here nobody else can, but this building is what we call the studio. So this is where all of the jewelry type projects go on. So we have a handful of rolling mills and other equipment that's very jewelry specific. This disaster area here is my bench, and area next to it is the soldering area where I do all the hot work that I do at the bench.
Mm-hmm.
This very nice and neatly cleaned up, organized bench is where my bench jeweler David works, and luckily he puts up with my mess. I'm really glad to have him. He's off today, but and let's see what else. Stone setting area. We've got a small machine area, a little lathe, a little mill. Let's see. This is a fun thing. It's probably older than most of us all combined. It's called the clink roller. It's what they used to use to make seamless wedding bands, and it was one of those eBay finds that I was lucky enough to get my hands on. But allows you to roll things up very rapidly from, well, when I'm working with seamless bands, can go from like a size 4 to a size 11 before you even know what's going on. So you got to learn how to use it very carefully. But
Yeah.
it basically pinches the ring between that big roller and this little pin here and rolls it up really fast. We found it really useful on our Damascus steel bands to allow us to work on them.
Okay. So is that how you size a ring if you need to change?
No, it's a little too aggressive for ring sizing.
Okay.
This is the newest rolling mill for the shop. Got this last year. This is a kind of a monster mill. Really glad to have it though. Works wonderfully for us. Yet another rolling mill that I've managed to break. I'm really hard on them, so this one eventually I'll get it repaired, but right now it's got a broken gearbox. Let's see, what else is going on in here? Back in this area is my design area, computer. This box over here is where I carve the mokume patterns. So it's plexiglass box to kind of keep everything contained. And you can see all that dust in there. That's all little needle-like metal shavings that would be everywhere if I didn't have it inside the box.
Sure.
So I've got a set of gloves that allow me to work inside of there, work with this tool, but keeps everything inside the box.
Is that a setup that you built yourself?
Yeah, oh, yes. Yeah. I have a hard time finding a lot of the tools that I need, so I have to make them. And I would demo this, but it's the most, well, let me just give you a quick sample of the noise. So, kind of reminds you of the dentist office.
Yeah.
So that's a 1/2 horsepower high-speed cutting tool. And I'm able to do all the carving of the mokume to create the patterns inside of that box. And so this side was the shop, I mean the studio. So let me show you the shop. This is where the bigger, nastier work goes on, dirty. This is, I've got a couple of hydraulic presses here, and I'll be demoing something on this as we get further through our little tour here. But that's a 50-ton press, and that's a 150-ton press.
Wow.
Kiln, another kiln. This thing here, I don't know if I can get far enough back. That's the glove box, and that's I'm probably the only one in the world who uses something like this in their jewelry making procedure. But that's where I melt all of the alloys that I use to make my mokume. So that box is full of argon, and kind of see down in there, there's a ingot mold and a crucible and casting machine. So I'm able to melt my metal in there with no oxygen present. It's totally full of argon. And so I get really clean metals melted, and I don't have to use a lot of deoxidizers and other things that are used by commercial manufacturers.
Okay.
And let's see, what else have we got here? Like I said, I have to build tools. So this is a CNC lathe, and that over there in the corner is a milling machine. So I use this to make things like side rollers for my rolling mill, forge tooling, all kinds of different stuff gets made here.
Cool.
And let me turn this off for the moment. So this is the forge area. These two pieces of equipment are power hammers. The one that's kind of gray and red is a mechanical hammer. And so it's got an electric motor that spins a crankshaft, and when you step on the pedal, it goes bang, bang, bang. The red and blue one is an air hammer. It's driven by two air cylinders there that you see on either side. That's 100 pounds of mass that slams down when you step on the pedal. So this is used for forging out the mokume. A furnace, another hydraulic press, and this is kind of almost more like a blacksmith's area than a jeweler's area. But mokume is really kind of a little of both, a little blacksmithing and a little bit of jewelry making all combined into one.
So do you make other things than jewelry? Do you make other things in mokume?
Yeah, I make, well, I've made a lot of different things in mokume over the years. Everything from little accessories for the Japanese tea ceremony to things for, well, I made a chalice for a Roman Catholic priest. Make boxes and cups and a variety of things that are not jewelry.
Are those more challenging than the jewelry?
Sometimes. The chalice was an incredibly challenging project in that it was something that was designed by the priest who had been an architect before he decided to become a priest. And I don't know if anybody's ever worked for an architect before, but it's a challenging process. He had lots of design ideas, and well, we got through it. It worked well, but it was about 1.5 years of work. It was over 1.5 years time period. I didn't work on it solidly for 1.5 years.
Well, thanks for that tour. Again, if you're just joining us, we're live with James Binnion in Washington State. If you've missed any of the video so far, we are recording it, and it's going to be posted on Abracadabra's Instagram as well as James Binnion's Instagram. And if you have any questions for Jim, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So that was an interesting tour. I definitely saw a lot of machinery that I wasn't familiar with, even working in a jewelry store myself. You have a lot of stuff.
I've never met a tool that I didn't feel like I could find a home for in my shop.
Perfect. Okay, so you were gonna do some demonstrations for us. What are you gonna do?
So let me just give a quick explanation, and then we're going to go back over to the shop for a moment. So what I've got set up is I set a billet of mokume up this morning, and I put it in the furnace. And I'm going to take it out of the furnace and put it under one of the hydraulic presses and forge it. So it's kind of a showy little thing because there's a little bit of fire, a lot of heat, and metal squishing at high temperatures. Lots of fun. So quickly, this is a billet of mokume. This is about 38 layers of copper, brass, and bronze. And I'm not going to do one quite this big today, but this is a whole bunch of sheets that were put together and fired in the forge. And this is kind of what we're going to end up with as soon as I forge it and let it cool down where I could pick it up and handle it.
Okay.
So
we've just been joined by someone who got a wedding ring from you 23 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Shout out.
Wow, that's cool. I thank you very much. We appreciate it. So I'm gonna, because I'm gonna need both hands and for safety reasons, I'm gonna have Terry, my wife, take over the filming of this. And so we're gonna step next door and kind of get started with this. But I'll open up the furnace. I'll take the material out in tongs and I'll move it over to the hydraulic press and I'll give it a good squeeze. So that's the plan. Let me go ahead and hand this over to Terry. When we go, say hi.
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 And go ahead and switch it to, there we go. All right, so head next door here.
How long have you guys worked together?
Well, we got married in August of 1998. I was a medical social worker and had an opportunity to take severance and leave the following January, and that's when I started working in the business. Okay, so here comes the kiln.
Oh, hot stuff.
You would not want to put your hand in there.
No. About what temperature is it, Terry?
What temperature, Jim?
1450.
1450.
Fahrenheit or Celsius?
Fahrenheit.
And so that is the red hot billet right there.
That's red hot. I love the color.
Yeah, it has a pretty color.
All right, so you can see the material there.
See the gloves that he uses?
There it is. All right, so I reduced it by about 20% in thickness there. And there's the laminated material.
So there's the red hot billet.
All right.
It's hard to say how many, Jim can answer this, how many hours in a single mokume-gane, because you have all the preparation of the billet, making the billet, then making the ring. So it's a multi-step process. So you can see how it's already starting to cool down.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't touch it at this point. He's closing everything up.
All right.
Now where do we go?
So we'll go back next door. So I'm going to set it right here, and this is a little fan that blows air across it. And I don't like to quench the mokume until I get much further along in the process. Okay. Just because I don't want to shock the material at this point. It's bonded, but the bond gets better the more I work it. So I treat it very delicately at the beginning.
Explain quench.
Explain quench. Quench is putting it in water, and it goes hiss and steams a lot, but not this time. We're just going to let it air cool here for a moment.
Okay, so, and so quenching it could actually damage it?
Let me jump back here. Yeah, there's a lot of thermal shock when you quench it. You're going from extremely high temperature, 1,400 degrees down to room temperature now. And so that can be a little hard on the billet at the beginning.
Okay, what could you potentially see happen when you do that and it goes wrong?
Oh, it could split. It could come apart.
Yeah.
In learning how to do this, it's a big problem is trying to keep it all together and still work it down to the necessary amount to where you can begin to actually do something with it. And it's very delicate at the beginning, and you just need to treat it carefully as you work with it. It's easy to do too much too fast and break it. A lot of people are concerned about the initial lamination, the heating it, and that's the problem, and that they might have issues there. But I found in the 30-odd years I've been doing this that the reality is that's not the area where you break things. It's later on when you're trying to mechanically reduce it down in thickness. And if you push it too hard, too fast there, you're going to break it.
We had a couple questions come in so far.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. One viewer was wondering about how many hours goes into creating one mokume wedding band.
Oh, it's really, really hard to say exactly. To get to the point of being able to start making the wedding band, we're probably 8 to 10 hours of work just to get to the point of having a piece of metal that we can start bending into a wedding band. And then, of course, depending on the complexity of the band, there could be another 8 to 10 hours if it's a fairly complex piece.
Wow. So very labor intensive.
Yeah, a very labor intensive process. It's, unlike a lot of other jewelry making processes where, I'm just going to quickly carve a wax, or I'm going to print a wax now, 3D printers, and then cast it and, spend a couple hours finishing it. This has got, every ring probably has 16 to 20 hours of hands-on time working on the material.
Wow. That's impressive.
So,
we have a couple other questions.
Yeah,
They're kind of
sure.
Jason wants to know if there was an oxygen scavenger in the kiln.
Charcoal, yes.
Charcoal, okay.
When I opened it up and you saw those flames come out, that's because the charcoal in there has been superheated, and what little oxygen kind of seeps in around the lid turned into carbon monoxide. And when I opened it up, that carbon monoxide started to burn rapidly and turn into carbon dioxide. So all of that stuff that you saw me lift off of the top, that was charcoal, and then there's charcoal also in the bottom. So yeah, those are definitely in there to keep oxygen from getting to the billet while it's hot.
Okay. Yeah, and I think you may have just answered Bill's question. He's asking if there's another chamber inside the kiln to control the oxygen intrusion.
No, well, there's that can that I opened up is the only chamber inside of there. It's a stainless steel can that seals the material, but it's a loose seal. It's not like it's screwed down or anything. As you saw, it just I have a weight sitting on top of it to keep it closed, and that's it.
Is this a repurposed can or a can that was?
Yeah. Oh, it's the kind of thing you get at a restaurant supply house. It's steam table can.
Yeah. All right. Well, what are you going to show us next?
So I let me grab the phone here. So I've got some things over here. I showed you the kind of that raw billet at first. So this is the same material as that. This is about half of what that raw one was. Mm-hmm. And at this point, it's been hammered down, it's been rolled, and it's, let's see if you can sort of see, it's kind of hard to see the layers in it, but yeah, there you go.
Light hits them, yeah.
So it's about 36, 38 layers, something like that.
And what metal do you have in there?
This is copper, brass, and bronze. And I use a lot of this for testing things out. I also make things that aren't jewelry, that aren't rings out of this. This is suitable for, you know, making a set of earrings, a belt buckle, bracelets, things like that. But it's not really suitable for rings because it would corrode away too quickly. Yeah. Because your hands are always wet, hopefully, because you're washing your hands many times a day.
That's right, for 30 seconds.
And even more so now lately. So that's partway through the process. Okay. And when I get it rolled down to about this thickness, you can still, yeah, you can sort of see the layers there. This is the same stacking order, same number of layers. And this is about the thickness where I would start to cut into it.
Okay.
And I made this for a project that I can't really talk about right now, but I'll be letting everybody know in the middle of next month where they might see something about it. But right now it's got to kind of remain a secret.
Oh, thanks for that little teaser.
So anyway, at this point, I'm going to start carving into something like this with that toolbox, the carving box that I showed you. And as I start to carve into it, I start exposing the layers that are down in, you know, as I cut through, it's like a topographic map. Every amount I cut in exposes different layers. And eventually you end up with something like this, where all of the, you can see every little line there is where I've cut through a layer of material. And you can see, you know, using various widths of material, I get differing line weights. And then this one has been formed using one of my hydraulic presses and a die that I made. And this is kind of a start for a neck piece.
Nice.
So this would be cut out. This is just, you know, the pre-forming step, and there would be a lot more work done on this. For rings, I'm going to make a piece that is, let's see if I can get it to focus. Come on. There we go. So I'm going to take a bar of material and I'm going to twist it. And once it's twisted, I start to carve into it. You can see the marks where I've carved into the material. And eventually, we're going to end up with something like this. You can see the diagonal lines are the twisting, and they're distorted by the material that I've carved out. So as it gets carved and then flattened, it ends up being something like this that could then be turned into a ring. So this is an example of a typical piece of stock material that we would do in precious metals. to make rings out of. So we take it to about this point and then stop until we get an order for this particular material, and then we'll start to cut the ring.
I see.
And then it'll end up being carved and turned into a blank, something like this. And then eventually it gets bent up into a ring.
Gorgeous. What
And
metal
these are,
combination is that one?
I'm sorry?
What metal combination is that one?
Well, this is copper, brass, and silver.
Okay.
And I do a lot of work in this to develop patterns, to test out ideas, because, well, you know, when I first started doing this, gold was like $350 an ounce, and I thought that was outrageous, and it scared the death out of me when I was starting to make pieces out of it. Now at over $1,700 an ounce, I'm still scared to hell to work with it because, you know, a screw up is so expensive. So I do a lot of test work in copper, brass, and silver to try and figure out what. So like, you know, something like this, if I get an order for a ring that looks like this, very often I will make the ring out of the copper, brass, and silver, and sometimes even send this to the client so that they're happy with, you know, what it's going to look like. And then I'll make it out of the other material. So yeah, it doesn't want to stay in focus there. There we go. And I saw a question about what's my favorite material combination. Boy, I don't know. In rings, I think probably my favorite is what we call our standard 4, which is this combination right here. And I don't know if, again, I can get the camera to focus on it. No, it doesn't really want to seem to do that. This is 18 karat yellow, 14 karat palladium white. Ah, there we go.
There we go.
Got to get my hand in there too. 14 karat palladium white, 14 karat red, and sterling silver. And I think I really like this one the best of the materials that we work with. I mean, they're all nice. You know, it's like I don't work in materials I don't like.
Right. You just got a shout out from Robert. Robert says that you made 2 rings for him so far, and he loves them.
Oh, great! I'm glad to hear that, Robert. So here's an example of something that we might do for. We use these a lot for ring boxes, for the tops for a wedding ring box. And this is again copper, brass, silver. And let's see, here's another one that this is what we call a canyon pattern. And again, on the phone, it's not that great of a pattern, but you can see instead of flattening out the carving, we're leaving it in relief and finishing all the surface. And so this is again the 18 karat yellow, 14 karat red, 14 karat palladium white, and silver. And then it has 14 karat red gold rims on it.
That's a really cool texture.
So yeah, I really like this a lot too. That's that actually has a separate name in Japanese. It's called guri-bori, and it was the original method that was developed when they were making mokume. We call it all mokume now, but back in Japan, mokume-gane, which means wood grain metal, is actually the name of a texture, not the process. But now everybody uses it for a process name. So this is a slightly different thing. This is stainless Damascus. This is 304 and 316 stainless steel. And it's laminated together in a very similar process, but a lot hotter, up over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And you have to do all of your carving and working with it blind because the colors are exactly the same between the two materials. Yeah. And it's only after we etch it that you can see the pattern in it. So it presents an interesting challenge in making.
So we had a couple more questions. One
sure.
about the texture, about, I think specifically about the etching. How do you create?
Let me flip back around here. So the etching is generally done with some form of acid, or we've tried to move away from using the strong acids in most cases. So we're using actually an electrolytic process that etches away the silver. And so in the precious metal rings, the gold is not affected by the etching, but the silver is. So it gives us a way to have both a color and a texture in the ring. Now, the stainless steel is a little different in that it's very resistant to corrosion, and basically acid etching is a corrosion process. So we have to use almost boiling hot hydrochloric acid. Wow. And it's nasty. Have to do it under a fume hood and protective gear and all of that, because again, if you didn't etch it, you wouldn't even be able to see that there were two different metals there.
Right. And another viewer who wondered if you ever teach mokume-gane classes. Oh, I know you said the other day that you had a...
Yeah, I do. Sometimes, well, in more normal times, it was typically like once a year. Yeah. I am not sure. There is a class scheduled for much later this year, but I'm not certain that's going to happen either. We'll have to see, but I'm kind of doubtful at this point. So I don't want to mention too much about dates or anything, but typically once a year, I do a class. Okay.
And if we want more information about your classes, where should we look at? Your website?
My website, or the best thing, if you want to know about a class, if you'll send us an email, and there's a contact page on the website that you can fill out, and it'll send us an email, and tell us that you're interested in a class. We keep a list of people who are interested, and when we get one scheduled, we let everybody know that when it's going to be and where it's going to be.
Okay, very good. Do you have more things to show us? Or the question.
I think I am pretty much at the end of things to show. Hold on.
Somebody asked the question of how do you hide the solder?
Terry was just saying somebody had asked about hiding the solder seam.
Yes.
There's a lot of ways to do that. I've developed kind of my own signature method where I'm soldering it together and then I'm adding some material to it so that it doesn't really look like there's much of a seam there. And let's see, there we go. I've got one here, and I'm gonna flip the camera around again and see if I can show. There we go. And all right, see if I can get the light right. So right in the middle of that ring there is the seam.
You and plug, right?
Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm excavating and then soldering another piece of mokume into that spot. And yeah, we kind of inelegantly call that a plug. But
I like how it looks.
it's different on each ring, and it just gets rid of that straight line that you would end up with if you just did a butt joint and joined the two ends together.
So if you had to size the ring, is that the area where you would size it? Where the little plug is?
We rarely have to cut the ring. We're almost, I've tried to make these rings as strong as I can. And part of the goal of that is to allow us to shrink or stretch the rings. Now, that's not to say that we don't have an issue sometimes when we do that. But most of the time we're able to, if we're talking about like two sizes, we can generally shrink or stretch a ring within two sizes. If we do need to cut it, yes, that's exactly where we would go in and cut it and then replace the plug if we needed to. But I think in 30 odd years, I've had to add metal maybe 4 times. You know, we're generally able to make something work. I've more often had to cut it to do radical shrinking. But even then, we had one fellow who he originally bought a ring. It was pretty good size, 11 1/4. Terry's helping me here with my memory. And we took it up a couple of times in size. And then a couple of years later, we got a call from the guy, and his doctor had gotten on him about his weight, and he went ahead and lost a bunch of weight. So we had to then take it down to like, 3 sizes.
Wow.
And that was actually a ring that had rails. It was a fairly complex ring, and we were able to do all of that without having to cut it and resize it that way. So we do know how to work with this material at this point and are able to do things like that. But that's been a part of my design philosophy since the beginning, is to try and make it where we don't have to do that unless it's something really radical. We have, like I said, maybe 4 rings in the 30 years.
Wow. Do you have any general advice about caring for your mokume-gane ring?
One of the things that I think is really important is because it does have silver in it. Sometimes people will get into something that's going to discolor the silver.
Like a
sulfur compounds are notorious for that, and especially if your water has got some sulfur in it, or you happen to go and soak in a nice hot spring somewhere that's got a little bit of sulfur in it, you'll come out and you'll look at your ring and you'll go, oh my God, the whole thing's all the silver's turned black. And that's pretty easy to take care of. A little bit of baking soda and a toothbrush, and you can gently abrade that right off. The other thing that tends to darken it radically is chlorine bleach. So if you're going to be working with chlorine, you may want to take the ring off before you do that, or just be aware that, again, using baking soda and water as a paste and then a soft toothbrush, you can generally clean that up pretty easily. And if somebody does have a problem that they can't clean up, of course, we're happy to take care of it. We don't find that for wedding bands, for something that somebody's wearing all the time, we don't really see tarnish as an issue, because just the general abrasive wear that you get on your hand keeps the silver bright. And that's one of the reasons we don't oxidize or patina the silver. I see a lot of newer makers offering rings that where they patinaed the silver. Doesn't last. General abrasive wear is going to remove that patina pretty quickly, and then the customer's going to go, well, what happened to that nice black color? And you're going to go, I don't know, it wore off. So that's that's the big reason we do not patina the silver, is that it's not really very permanent.
Yeah.
So we avoid that because we really want it to look like you bought it for as long a time as is possible. And at this point, we do have some rings out there that have been out there for 30 odd years. And occasionally we'll get one that comes back in. And I have to admit that when I look at my earlier work, I often cringe just because I'm never totally satisfied with what I'm doing, and I'm always trying to improve it. But, you know, I've been pretty happy actually with the way the rings stand up to long-term wear.
Yes, I'm sure the wearers are too.
So, any other questions?
I haven't seen any come in lately. If anyone else out there has any questions, now is the time to go ahead and type it in. We do have a handful of jewelers in the audience. Do you have any words of wisdom for people getting into the business now?
Oh. The
Any
business,
advice you wish?
yeah, the business of jewelry is rarely been very stable. You know, it's craft jewelers. It's a tough road. It's hard to get established, and you know, as of I really think since 2007, it's been extremely difficult for the small craft jeweler to find a niche to work inside of. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the biggest thing. If you're going to do it, is you've got to find something that's uniquely yours, that also attracts people who look at your work and they want to pay money for it. But yeah, it's not necessarily an easy business to work in.
Yeah, yeah. To find your niche, find your passion.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure what else I'd say to somebody about that.
Well, it certainly looks like you found yours.
Well, I'm stubborn enough that I've been able to make it work.
That's great. Well, I think that's it for questions. So thank you so much, Jim, for joining us. And again, if you missed any part of this video, we did record it. It will be on James Binnion's Instagram as well as ours here at Abracadabra. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to either of us on Instagram or through email on either one of our websites.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jim and Terry.
Well, thank you. Good to do this. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thanks. You too.